Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and in this week's Marvel Superheroes Advanced Role-Playing Game System, we're going to be talking about some more realms of magic, more specifically, the schools of magic. Let's delve right into this stuff, alright? And first off, heads up, I don't like the way that any of this stuff is written. Like, pretty much none of it. So I'm going to be doing a few changes here and there. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you the way that it says, then I'm going to give you some suggestions. Okay, so several different schools. This is pretty necessary, especially if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've got different forms of magic. You could be a diviner, you could be a conjurer, you could be alterationist. Just there's so many, an illusionist. There's so many different kinds of magical schools out there. Why just have blanket? I do magic. What kind? What do you mean? That's dumb. So, schools of magic, I think, is an absolute must-have. All right. So, more than just flavor, they should give you benefits, and sometimes they should even have things that are disabling. So let's look at the first one, magic for chaos. All right, magic for chaos. This is essentially chaos magic. That's cool. Oftentimes this could be considered black magic. And if you want to add something different, by all means, go ahead. I've already given you my take on the way that magic actually works to a very small degree. The idea of the black magic, the white magic, and the neutral magic, which there is actually no such thing as neutral magic in the schools of magic, the philosophy, the theology of magic in and of itself in mundane modern Earth. But nonetheless, yeah, there should be a neutral magic in the games. So chaos magic in and of itself. This is a forbidden or dangerous type of magical school whose goal is to promote chaos, which will lead to an evil tyranny. Blah, 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 blah. The weakness of this magic, the vulnerability, is that white mages will always be coming after you. That's stupid. That's stupid. Just plain and simple. Look, Kim Eastman, God bless your soul, but this was just lazy. All right? I just got to call it like it is. That is so lazy. White magicians will come after you. Come on, man. Let's have some real fun with this, okay? How about a negative? A negative. To do a negative, let's say, a positive. Here, I'm trying to reverse things. For a positive, one of the benefits that you get is that magic that attacks other people, magic that is considered offensive magic, all right? So most universal spells, but anything that you would, to harm someone else or to even affect someone else. So like polymorph self, you don't get any benefits for it. Polymorph other, you get benefits for it. A +1 column shift. Heck, you can even get really silly with it and say polymorph self is you get a negative. -1 column shift to polymorph yourself, but +1 column shift to polymorph somebody else. Enlarge or shrink yourself, -1 column shift. Enlarge or shrink somebody else, +1 column shift. That might seem a little bit too extreme. Fine, if that's the case, don't do the negative for yourself, but definitely do the positive otherwise. You know what I'm saying? What do you call it? Or do something to the effect of, when you're actually trying to engage the idea or propagate the idea of chaos theory, actually trying to wreck things, ruin things, hurt others, something to that effect, destroy the established system, then you're going to get a +1 to those things. This will really make it hard for evil characters to use chaos magic, right? Because, you're just going to be basic, plain Jane, blase, when you're, trying to do good with chaos magic. But, So another benefit is that dimensional energies, and this only works if you actually have the capability of using dimensional spells, but for the most part, dimensional energies that use certain people, like, for instance, Watum, or the obvious one, Dormammu, Icon, perhaps. Some of these, they'll actually give you pluses, because they're, in general, considered to be evil. Sidorak would be one of them. But I would definitely consider doing something else with it. Like I said, I personally, if I were running a pure magical campaign, I would do the +1 for affecting others, -1 for affecting yourself. I'm going to get right into the idea of the white magic also, the magic of order, which actually comes later on, but I'm just going to do it now because why exactly wouldn't I? So where is this stuff over here? Magic for order. This is considered white magic. This is the school to which Earth's former Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One, the Earth's current Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Strange, belong to. It's the most powerful white school of magic, striving for order and blah, 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 blah. Boring. What's the downside of using magic for order? Well, quite simply, black magicians come after you. Boring. Snooze fest. I'm going to go take a nap now. No. You could do the exact same thing, all right, where offensive spells, personal spells, whatever, maybe personal spells you get a +1 with, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you could do the exact opposite with the order chaos magic, and say, oh, you get +1 for spells that affect you and -1 for spells that affect others. That's certainly a possibility, absolutely. Or what I would do instead, while I would still keep what I said for chaos magic, for white magic, magic of order, I would actually do instead +1 to use all personal spells. Or you can even say you don't lose 1 hit point when you're using the personal spells. Either one is actually really freaking cool, right or wrong. Plus, personal energies like astral projection and shield, those are the things that white magicians use anyway. They're really good at using personal spells. The other spells are just, as they come along. But they're constantly always using personal spells. And it fits with the idea of personal magic, white magic, as I'd explained in the previous video. So there's that. So I would consider one of those sort of ideas. And the negative side of it is that chaos magic should probably have an extra effect on you, maybe. Maybe it does maybe it just does like an extra 5 points of damage, or an extra 10, if you want to get mathematical with it, an extra 10% damage. So if it's going to hit you for 50 points, it's going to be 55 points. It's going to hit you for 10 points, it's actually going to hit you for 11 points, Just something just something as simple as that. So this way the chaos magician, the black magic practitioner, might think, oh, see, chaos magic is much more powerful because they're always going after white magicians. So something along those lines. I would do something completely, like that, all right? Anyhow, so Druidic magic. Now this one could be fun. I'm going to read this whole thing out of the book for you. This school practices Celtic. Yes, it's Celtic, not Celtic. Celtic is a basketball team. The Boston Celtics, but Celtic is the actual Celtic tradition. So there's some people out there who don't know that. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad, just it is what it is. It's called Celtic. When I used to go to, not seances, but when I used to go to like magical meetings and things like that, thaumaturgic meetings when I was younger, shut up. I remember my buddy Chris actually said, yeah, I'm interested in like Celtic magic because it's my heritage and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's just like, oh my God, dude, stop. It's called Celtic magic. You're actually killing my eardrums right now. People would actually get really upset when you said Celtic magic. So anyway, Celtic earth magic, drawing strength from the powerful... let me just start this over again. This school practices Celtic earth magic, drawing strength from the powers of nature. It is particularly powerful in natural earth settings, but has a special vulnerability to iron and steel. It is a neutral magic school. Now this makes sense, okay? This should absolutely be a neutral or gray path, okay? As far as weaknesses, -1 column shift to cold iron or steel. Actually, you could say iron and steel, and -2 column shifts when in near proximity to cold iron. Cold iron simply means it's unforged iron. It hasn't been put to heat, so it still has all the impurities in it. You have to, if you know anything about blacksmithing, seen in TV or whatever, you take a lump of iron and you put it in the furnace, all right? You got to heat it up, and then you're able to start hammering it out, and then you put it in the water also, but then you're adding heat to it later on, and then you're bang, bang, bang. You know what I'm saying? You're doing all that to get rid of all I just said, the impurities, like some of the earth that's still stuck in there with it. So yeah, you gotta, before you can really, you gotta smelt it in order to make good, but pre-smelting, it's considered cold iron, as opposed to smelted iron. So cold iron is definitely harder on them. And when we get into the idea of fairy magic, Asgardian magic, you're going to understand why I say these particular negatives. So I would say -1 column shift in the presence or when being touched by, more specifically, iron or steel, and -2 column shifts if it's cold iron, because that's a particularly big thing. And you can't cast magic if you're bound by cold iron. Okay, so if someone takes unsmelted iron and they're able to form handcuffs out of it, just hammering it out or squishing it out, whatever, stretching it and bending it around you, as opposed to smelting it and making handcuffs first, boom, there you go. So, and if you're bound by magic, just go with it, work with it. As far as the benefits, I would say that if you're actually in nature and things like that, then you're all sorts of hooked up. You get pluses, but more than that, I would say you get +2 column shifts if you're actually in a circle, meaning like some kind of a group. All right, so if you're casting a ceremonial magic, especially in a group, you should definitely get +2, maybe even +3 column shifts. A ceremony by yourself in nature, or a ceremony with other people, other druids, or at least other magic users, and you're the leader of it. In one of these seance circles or whatever, like at Stonehenge, then +3 column shifts to your spell. There is circle magic or ceremonial magic later, where certain spells are only able to be cast by people who are in a ceremony. I would recommend that, if you are the leader of this, if you practice Druidic magic, Celtic magic, and you are the leader of this particular group, this coven, if you will, and you are in a place like Stonehenge or a place of magic, maybe along ley lines, then you should absolutely get like a +3, maybe even more, for casting your spell. That would be my recommendation. Okay, so, and Druidic doesn't only mean Celtic. It's anything along those lines. This could be out in the middle of a desert. All right, Druidic magic is mostly something that involves like a nomadic sort of individual. So the far western Chinese, what are they called? The Uyghurs or the Uyghurs. Depends on where you're from, your regionality, how you would pronounce it. But the Uyghurs, all right? People like that. A lot of people have the ability to use Druidic type, not necessarily shamanistic magic, but yeah, absolutely, why not? Something along those lines. Now there's fairy magic. So fairy magic is supposed to be for like the borders of Britain and Ireland. They're right on a parallel with the fairy verse. But I would also say like elven magic, Elfheim, Svartalfheim, like this for the Norse. I would absolutely count this as fairy magic also. It's stated as such. Basically, based on the practice of the fairy, an ancient race of beings with supernatural powers who originated from an extra-dimensional world. They're saying Britain and Ireland, but I expand that much further. I would even include the magic of the satyrs from the Greek mythologies, of Olympus, the satyrs and the like Pan and all those, the goat-legged people, just stuff like that. Absolutely, 100%. Tinkerbell, for crying out loud. If you're going to have a Neverland campaign, that would be fairy magic. And there's a good chance that you've probably got fairy blood. So that's probably the only way that you can really cast this magic. It's very close to Druidic magic, but I would say that this is much more specifically, so it's more like a sorcerer in Dungeons and Dragons. You've got that fairy blood inside of you. Iron or steel is a special vulnerability to you. I would consider tripling that for these guys. That's right, you heard me straight. Triple. Fairy magic is particularly powerful. Anything that the druids can do, these guys can do way better. I would say that you'd be able to cast, like with your druidic blood, maybe one of the benefits is that you can cast dimensional magic and you don't have to roll or you don't have to entreat anybody for it because they're relatives of yours. Why would they ever say no? All right, so guaranteed success for dimensional spells when it comes to fairies, because why not? Something along those lines. And anything that involves movement spells, maybe consider, and possibly even illusion, all right? Maybe considering giving a +1 column shift to all of their abilities for movement, especially things like teleportation, dimension travel, right? But anything. And also like I said, charm, hypnosis, or any kind of an illusion. 100% give them a +1 column shift for that. But the drawbacks are being in the presence. That means within, let's say, an area, maybe even 2 areas. Not even just touching you, but within the presence of 1 or 2 areas of iron or steel. You're -3 column shifts to your ability to use your power. And if cold iron is even touching you, no chance to cast your magic. You're considered done, all right? You can't cast your magic at all. Something along those lines. You want to make it harder, you want to make it easier, that's up to you. This is just my suggestions. Okay. Voodoo magic, which I wound up passing over. This is a really fun one. Voodoo. This school is derived from the Loa. So the spirit gods of voodoo, a faith originated and practiced in Haiti. The character is most likely a Hungan or a voodoo priest. Voodoo magic is particularly effective in its homeland and in locations of the dead. It has no special vulnerabilities and is considered a white magic, but can be perverted into a chaotic magic. So that's just a whole bunch of gibberish as far as I'm concerned. First off, yes, it did originate being called voodoo in Africa, in Haiti, but let's be realistic. These Haitians, the first freed slaves, they weren't even freed. They were freed by their own hands. They revolted and they won. And they're still paying for it today by all the nations that were involved prior being infuriated with them and still not wanting to give them a fair deal in trades, is what it is, man. But all this stuff came from their original beliefs, which stemmed from Africa. So while they may not have all the same gods' names over there, the entities in and of themselves still exist in spirit. They've simply changed the names to protect the innocent, I suppose. But yeah. Through time and tradition, it's the same stuff that they brought from their own homelands. So there are many, you got to remember this also. All along the West Coast is where slaves were taken from for the Americas, all right? Similarly, the Middle East, they took slaves from Northern Africa and some of East Africa. And they were brought away. So their gods' names may have changed, So voodoo is basically anything that originates from Africa. So it's an extremely primal magic, not primitive. That's a very different conversation. It's a very primeval magic. So we're talking about nature spirits at the heart of things. Ideas. So not just concepts, just ideas in and of themselves. The idea of trickery and things like this. This exists. All right. So like Anansi, and maybe you just change the names up. So you got Baron Samedi. You've got, think about like Shadow Man, all right, and things along those lines. Bosso, I can't remember his last name. Bosso Kiblaman. Anyway, there are a bunch of different sort of magics along this line. Basically, places of the dead should, because it's known that the idea of the zombie, the zombie, I know I'm pronouncing that last one wrong, but whatever. It's not one of my typical repertoire of things to continue saying. But the zombies, we know that this is a big characteristic associated with voodoo, that they can raise zombies and control zombies. So I would say any place of the dead would be a plus for the casting of certain spells. If you're going to deal with spirits, anything like this, maybe even get a +1 column shift to communicate with friendly dimension magics, and any of the entities that you don't have as a contact are considered minuses. All right, so it's literally a positive or a negative when dealing with dimensional energies. Being in places where death, or not just death, but more specifically the spirits. All right. If you think it's just death, you're probably going to be a necromancer or some kind of chaos magic user. Voodoo in the negative sense, but voodoo in the positive sense, you understand it's just spirits. So it could actually be a church that you're in. Yes, a Roman Catholic church if you want to. Magic is considered very strong there. We can get into that conversation later if you want, but same thing, man. There's a lot of spiritual energy in places like churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, you name it. Taoist temples, all right, shrines, all these different places, including places like haunted houses where there's just the fear of, hey, this could exist here. Or maybe there is an actual poltergeist or something to that effect there. But any place where it's considered that there's strong spirit, that includes graveyards. Yeah, all these places. A shipwreck, okay? These places should give +1, maybe even +2 to practitioners of voodoo, the Hogan. So consider that. And as far as negatives are concerned, that's going to be a slightly harder one, but you could make this a more neutral magic where you just get pluses in certain places of power, but that's, and plus I also did say the dimension spells, didn't I? But that kind of if you use it, as I said, it's pluses and minuses anyway. If you've got a contact in the dimensional realm, you get a +1 column shift over what anybody else would have with that exact same contact. But if you don't have the contact, rather than it being neutral, it will automatically potentially treat you as hostile. Either way, you've got a -1 column shift to deal with these particular entities and to get your spell to pass. So, above and beyond what your actual standing is with these dimensional entities. Okay, Atlantean magic. Now this one could be really fun because this is the oldest known magic on Earth. All right, that's crucial. Like back when Atlantis was still, remember in the Marvel universe, this was back. Atlantis sank right around the time of the Hyborian Age. So yes, what do you call it? Conan? All right, during the times of Conan. Conan was integral to the Marvel Universe way, way, way back in the day. And in 2019, he's going to be integral again because Marvel's getting the license back for how long, who knows what they're going to do with it, whatever. I have spoken. But, yeah, back pre-Hyborian Age, okay, pre-Cataclysm times, freaking Atlantean magic, man, when they ruled the Earth, all right, because they were above ground at the time, Atlantean magic was it. It was it. So, first off, you got to have a reason why you've got Atlantean magic. You need a straight out origin. I would say you would need the occult background straight up. You're spending points. So there's a negative right there. You must have occult background specifically to be able to use Atlantean magic. Even, I would say, if you are Atlantean. You know what I'm saying? But maybe if you're Atlantean and you're a sympathetic judge, you'll say, okay, you're Atlantean, I'll excuse you from the whole having the mystical background thing. But that's up to you, dude. That's totally up to you. But Atlantean magic, this school was established eons ago in the ancient Earth civilizations of Atlantis. Little is known about the school except, and they start going over a bunch of names that most people aren't going to know, and nobody should really even care. It's considered to be white magic, but it's a lot more than that because Kim Eastman, I love you, man, but again, somebody who actually knows comic books, you can go into a lot more detail than just what's given here. Chthon, the first vampire. How about that? Is that considered white magic? No. No, it is not, would it? So, white magic, dark magic, middle of the road, the road less traveled, gray magic, gray Jedi Knight, whatever, man. However you're going to look at it, this is an ancient form of magic. So, I would say you have to have the occult background to use it, and your resources are going to be extremely limited. The chance of you actually having a mentor should be slim to none, all right? You probably have to buy a contact and hunt down this magic user. And maybe if you're Atlantean, maybe you know somebody who's been ostracized, okay? Maybe you're going to be, this would be easier if you use the DC version of Atlantis, because then we're just talking about the Silent School, right? Go and find some renegade user in the 9th Triad or something like that. But in Marvel, you don't find too many magic users there, do you? From Atlantean schools of magic. Jennifer Kale is one of them. How many people can really sit down and tell me right now who Jennifer Kale is, right? It's extremely rare. So I would say that one of the negatives, besides having to find somebody to teach you, which is going to be at least twice as difficult as normal. And more than that, the idea that some of these Everything I said before, just keep those in mind. But on top of that, my mind is just working overtime right now thinking about this one. This one should be very difficult. More importantly, your magic, maybe it'll cost you twice as much to be able to cast that magic. All right, we know that magic is extremely reduced in price as opposed to regular powers. Getting powers, learning magic is like a tenth of the cost. I would say double the cost when it comes to Atlantean magic. And finding those texts and things like that is going to be so much harder. So much harder. But the benefits now. The benefits should be interesting. And I can't tell you, I can't put my finger on any one thing. Maybe the beings who are going to respond to you in dimensional magic will respond to you, and you'll have all of them as positive, because they'll respect the idea that you're using this ancient form of magic. Maybe just something along those lines. That alone could be amazing. If you practice Atlantean magic, you automatically have access to dimensional abilities. That should definitely be one of them. But I think a lot of it has to do with the respect garnered in regards to Atlantean magic. I don't know about like water breathing and things like that. Maybe not, but just you could. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say you're +1 column shift to use things, but maybe you are. Maybe when you roll to get a magical ability, when you've paid twice as much for it, maybe you make it more expensive. Maybe you make it like 3 times as expensive. I wouldn't go more than 3 times, but whatever it is, whenever you roll to see what you already know what your power is going to be because that's the spell that you got. But when you roll to see how powerful it is, maybe it's +1 column shift. All right, so if you roll and it's going to be Remarkable 30, it's going to be Incredible 40. Go ahead, have some fun with it. I'm just saying. Maybe certain spells that you'll cast that require your psyche, maybe it's +1 column shift to whatever it would normally be. So if your Eldritch Shield is always going to be at your psyche ability, maybe it's psyche +1 for you, because that's one of the things. Something else that could be cool with Atlantean magic, maybe instead you also make it that you've got a particular favorite spell. Maybe a favorite 1 spell or a favorite 3 spells, and those particular ones get pluses to them. So anything that you want to do, but Atlantean magic, my opinion with everything that I know about Marvel, everything I know about the comic books, everything I know about this game, Atlantean magic, more so than Asgardian magic, all of it, I feel that this should be like the most rare magic that there is. And that this should be something that's just out of this world. There's got to be something very special about it, both positive and negative. Okay, scientific magic. Now this one's fun. And right away you're originally going to be thinking of alchemy, which is something that they talk about here. One of the positives about scientific magic is that you get a free skill. It's probably going to be a professional skill, a scientific skill, but you could also make it a professional skill as well. I would probably go with more of a scientific skill though. But I would understand if you want to do engineering. Anyway, if you're going to be using alchemy, here they say pharmacy, but this also uses This also used the original yellow box, so no. This actually came out around the time that the blue box that I always talk about came into existence. So yeah, let's just stick with the idea that it's actually chemistry that you would get, not pharmacy. I mean, pharmacy, really? Let's just stick with that. So if you were to use, let's say, and seriously, guys, go crazy with this. Something along the ideas of if you were going to do golem magic. You were really good with creating things. So if you were to use biology as your free skill that you would get, you're really good at creating life, so to speak, like golems. Iron golems, clay golems, flesh golems. Make Frankenstein's monster. Just go nuts with it. You're really good at making zombies. And I'm not talking about zombies like, okay, boo, rise from your grave. No, actual hooking them up in it. You are Dr. Frankenstein, baby. That's who you are. That's what you do. So you could be like Diablo with the alchemy and use the chemistry if you want. I'm trying to think of some other things you could do. If it's electricity, maybe you're homing in on the natural poles of magnetism, electromagnetism. They're perfectly aligned with each other. It's very hard to come up with the concept of separating the two. It's very mundane to separate them. In reality, in purest of theory, they are the exact same thing, for crying out loud. Very closely tied to each other. So maybe you're harnessing on that ability, and we're talking about weather control and magnetic generation, magnetic control, I should say. So maybe that's just something to do. And it's literally through the sciences, and you're just creating devices that allow you to do that. Maybe you can be like an artificer from the Dungeons & Dragons world from 3rd edition on. So you can do, I don't know, like you can actually, maybe make a power suit. You can actually be a power suit wearing magician. Why not? Just go crazy with it, dude. If you're not having fun, you're doing something really wrong, all right? This is the one where you can seriously have some fun, all right? Just go nuts. You know how they've been trying to talk about how Asgardian magic is very similar to science, like magic and science is practically the same thing. Okay, this could be a part of Asgardian magic if you really wanted to. So take something like blacksmithing. You could just take blacksmithing, and now you actually create magical items. Oh, has somebody been reading Mark Waid's Doctor Strange series, which is currently in production as I'm doing this. Issue number 5 just came out this week. So, yeah, man. Yeah, dude. This should be something that you let it all hang out, and you just no apologies whatsoever. So you get a free scientific talent with this. On top of that, there's certain things that you get with this. It's in here. You should be able to add 3 more spells to your immediate repertoire during character creation. 2 of them should be personal energy and 1 of universal energies. So, and of course, these are all artificial. So, magic users in this particular regard don't just cast magic, okay? So, they're not spell slingers. They're more like you're creating something, and this is how you're using what you're doing. Okay, so if you want to have, let's say, a magical wand, okay, you have created a magical wand. So when you're doing Eldritch Bolts, Eldritch Blasts, and things like that, you're using your magical wand. How many blasts do you get? Because you have charges. So you can't just sit there and start zap, 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 zap. You're going to run out. You're going to run out, fool. At some point, you're going to run out. So there we go. There we go. And then you've got to recharge them. All right, same thing with anything you're going to do. Let's say you want to make 3 potions. Okay, fine, by all means. Work that out with your judge. Diablo has pouches all over where he can just pull out a couple different things, but you've actually got however many spells you're able to buy for that particular game session, okay? It depends on the conversation between you and your judge. And judge, if you want to just simply roll a D100 and maybe reduce it by half, okay? Consider something like that. That's how many magical potions or whatever you're able to use. And yes, that also includes charges. So if you roll 50, let's just make this easy, and then you're going to reduce that by half. And mind you, this is coming from my head. This is not actually from the book. So you got 25. Okay, you've got 25 spell slots, you can say. Okay, I've got a ring that shoots electricity. Okay, cool. How many charges? Let's say 5. Okay, you got 20 spell slots left. You just use 5 of your 25 by having 5 charges in your little bzz, bzz ring. Okay, so what else are you going to have? I'm going to have a vial that allows me to grow, and then another one that allows me to shrink. Okay, you got 18 slots left. What are you going to do with them? So you have to know, this is going to be like the wizard in Dungeons & Dragons. You need to know every single spell you've got on your person when you go out there. All right? And that can change every time you go back to your headquarters, or if you've got a secret stash, a cache someplace. That's actually called a cache. Someplace, then boom, you're golden. You can resupply. But aside from that, you're kind of screwed. You can actually run out of spells. But you do get a bunch of extra in your repertoire because of that. So keep all of that in mind. So there's your pluses and your negatives. Special Realm or Pantheon. This is a school usually reserved for non-player characters. Go away. That's not happening. Not in my games. Not where I'm the judge. But can be the basis for player characters. Now we're talking. If carefully defined by a judge. Judge doesn't get to define it. The well, they get to work out the fine edges with the player character. That don't stifle imagination, guys. Never do that. Never do that, especially in a role-playing game. The magical teachings and spells come from the history of a special realm or pantheon of the Marvel Universe, such as Asgard and Olympus. Bonuses for this type of magic would come with the use of special items or spells developed by this pantheon, or spells developed by this pantheon or realm. And when at certain locations, Greece for Olympian pantheons. Penalties would include, or would exist as items or locations that exist to destroy the magic of that realm. Look, man, that's all cute. Let's see if we can't work something else out instead. If you've got Pantheon magic, like Asgardian magic and so on and so forth, that automatically comes with one dimensional magical entity that grants you your spells. That is a perfectly happy with you dimensional entity. You get that as a free contact. He, she, it, whatever is always happy with you. So let's just take the Greek pantheon for now. Zeus. Zeus is your main man, all right? Or maybe it's Poseidon, one of the big ones, okay? Pluto. Pluto would not be happy with you. So you want to call on Pluto, he's always going to be hostile with you. You got issues with Pluto, bud, you know? If there's certain magics that you want, like certain spells just give you a benefit to use, cool. Maybe your universal spells, if you're in, like if it's, you know, Olympus, that's your pantheon. If you're in Olympus, or if you're in Greece, or you're holding on to some item of power from that religion, which means you have to buy that. Those are power slots that you're using at this point to actually purchase weapons, and go back and check out character creation for that. But like unique weapons. But if you're in contact with these, maybe your universal abilities give you +1 column shift. All right, just something along those lines. But being away from these items kind of screws you over now. Now you're at -1 because you don't have that I don't know, that touch of your pantheon. All right, and you can do whatever you want with this, but this should be the one where you really get to just go crazy. Okay, this is the one where you're devising your very own school of magic, unlike everybody else's out there. So yeah, this should be the most fluid. So nature magic. This is an important school of magic, sometimes splintered into more specialized defined schools, such as Druidic or Fairy. Well, then stop talking about it. How about that? The belief surrounding all nature schools that I don't care about all that stuff. Look, the bonuses that apply to a nature school are in the form of greater effect upon and communication with nature, especially animals. Most spells for this school would include similar to those used by Shaman from the Alpha Flight, controlling elements, animal control, and so forth. The penalties include drawing the attention of chaotic creatures and characters who desire... No, that's just silly. Enemies in Magic are going to be guaranteed no matter which school you're in. So I don't ever want to read somebody saying, oh yeah, man, you're more likely to be attacked by... That's called being a judge and having characters and having bad guys, NPCs, to fight, you know, your good guys, your player characters. I don't want to hear about, oh, you're more likely to... Dude, bring that. Any day of the week. That's the easiest freaking negative there is. No. Magic should definitely cause you pain. There should be benefits, and there should be pros and cons. Clear pros and clear cons. So, how about this? If you're ever in the middle of a city, you're -2 to using your magic. If you're ever out in nature, you're +2 to use your magic. If your feet are not touching the ground, then you're -1 to use your magic. You know, if you're buried deep inside the earth, you're -1 to use your magic, because it's very unnatural from what the setting is that you're used to. All right, unless you got a specialized form of magic, which is like what one of the moloids would maybe use. Suddenly this moloid has the access to magic, subterranean magic. It's a specialized school that we just talked about prior. But in this particular case, you are very close to animals and things like that. More than that. So anything that has to do with nature. So while psychic energies they'll just be considered kind of neutral. Certain things like animal communication and control, polymorph, You know, what are some of the other ones that you could possibly use? Maybe running. Just think of an actual shaman. Think of and it would actually be pronounced shaman, but anything that you want along those lines. And that's not just Native American. That's also those are actually supposed to be called medicine men. The word shaman actually comes from Russia, the nomads from out there. Any kind of an aboriginal along those lines, anywhere, not just Australia, any aboriginal, this would probably be considered a form of nature magic, okay? As far as attracting the attention of negative spirits, that can happen with any school of magic. No, if you're stuck in the middle of industry, you're kind of screwed, okay? In the middle of a big city, God forbid if you're in a nuclear power plant, you might be completely cut off from your magic, all right? So the closer to nature you are, the better off you can use. And any kind of a spell like, animal summoning or anything along those lines, probably get a +1 column shift to use. That's the way I look at it. Okay, so let's move on a little bit here, shall we? We already did magic for order. Eclectic magic, that's a fun one. So with eclectic magic, this is an unorganized school of magic that is as it follows no one school of philosophy, but a hodgepodge of get as get can. I've never even heard of that saying before. Magic. It is considered neutral magic. Many of those who dabble in magic are not up to the level of a Marvel superhero and blah, blah, blah. Listen. So basically, eclectic magic will be something that does not have any kind of an affinity. If you do not want to have any negatives, then you ain't getting any positives either. So I don't care how powerful or weak you are. If you are true, like run-of-the-mill, in between, cutting through the slack, you do not have a master. You do not get the benefit of having a master. Later on, when we're talking about more magics and things like that, you'll see the massive benefit you get from having a master. No master for you, all right? That is a huge negative, brah. Like, you're just shafted royally without having a master. That's on you. You don't want to, you don't like any of the negatives someplace and you're not particularly happy with the positives. This is what you get. So no school, no affiliation. You are quite literally non-denominational in every single sense of the word, that nobody else has the same method as you. Then this is probably what you're dealing with. And also you might as well just use magic as it's explained by Grubb out of the Blue Book itself, which I already talked about in a previous video. I think the first video. So consider that. This is eclectic magic. This is just, all right? Gypsies can be considered of this sort of magic, so there's no drawback to it, but there's no benefit except being able to actually use magic. And there you go. So that is basically the schools of magic, as it were. Definitely get a little killer with making your own if you get the opportunity, if the judge allows it. Otherwise, consider what you can do with the other schools. All right, guys, that's it from me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.